The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to a Keefer and Kurre show you can hear at least 5 days a week right here on the TKR app and one of our most listened to shows too. Podcast that bad boy, and we'll get after it every single week. Of course, I'm hanging out with Kip throughout the entire week, kind of like my new partner after 40-something years in the industry. Man, we do television together. We're doing radio shows together. I love having Kip Keefer, big part of my life. And, of course, we're getting ready for the ABC 3340 show coming up again this Saturday. Before we get into our topic here, congratulations on sovereignty. And down the stretch they come. I was actually in the car. I was driving to Buffalo Wild Wings. I just left church. I figured I could get out of church at 5:35. They were going to run at 5:45, 5:50. I was going to make it to Buffalo Wild Wings just in time, and the gates came down just as I pulled the parking lot, so I had to listen to it to my car. Then, of course, I went in there to see the end of it. But congratulations on picking the 18 horse to pull it out.
Yeah, and you know, I'm proud of that because I was just unwavering. That was the horse I identified a couple of weeks before the race after programming and processing all of the preparatory races. And for those who aren't familiar, because I get so many questions on Derby weekend, people want to know what I should bet, who I like. You know, I had one question this week that was interesting. Do these horses run heats before the big race? No, it's not. It's not the Olympics. You don't have to qualify that way. You have to get enough points over the last 6 months or so to have a spot in that starting gate. But I get all kinds of bizarre questions. But Tony, I was unwavering on sovereignty. I mentioned last week on our show on talking on the starting lineup that sovereignty. A lot of the experts were disgruntled with him because he only ran second in the Florida Derby after winning another race down in Florida, the Fountain of Youth, but with a tremendous effort. But I pointed out the other day on that show, his regular rider, Junior Alvarado, was injured for that Florida Derby race, and they brought a replacement in. And, you know, it's almost like in any sport, you know, it's the first time that the replacement had ever been on him and didn't know him as well as Alvarado. And he still ran second in that race. It's not like he ran way up the track, but a lot of the experts, and again, we live in an era, and my own son Case, who's brilliant at what he does, but so much is based on numbers and statistics and data. I still like the eye test. Yep. I still like to judge a sporting event on patterns, and particularly ones involving people. You know, you get the right chemistry. You get a lot of things that are not easily reflected in data. And I was really impressed with this horse. Bill Mott, his trainer, I made the point that Bill Mott, who has been in the Hall of Fame for 12 years and he's still an active trainer, he's better now than he's ever been. Yeah. And this is a guy who had won Derby to his credit, but it was a disqualification, a controversial disqualification, and his 60-1 horse was placed first that race, which was good for our friend Monty Ballard, by the way, because when they disqualified Maximum Security that race, our friend Monty Ballard had I think it was a $10 exacta wheel where he had the horse that was placed first, Country House, on top of another horse, and he played all with his single. Anyway, that was about a $2,500 decision for Monty Ballard, that disqualification. So anyway, long and short of the story, Mott had this storied career, probably as good as just about any trainer, but he had never seen his horse actually cross the wire first in the Kentucky Derby, and this was the horse to do it. And I was really pleased to see him come through with flying colors, and I hope a lot of people listened, you know, because you know, this is one that I really felt strongly about. You know,
in Vegas, what the best game to play is if you want to make money. If you know what you're doing, you talking about casino games? Yes, I am. Craps is right. And you all you got to do is have one good night with a really good craps player to learn how it goes and remember numbers. You have to remember the odds because obviously if you're a $5 table or $10 table, you want to get max odds on everything. You don't want to bet underneath the odds that they're going to pay you on. And I've tried so many times, and for whatever reason, I'm more of a blackjack guy, and I love the books. But craps is the table where you can actually, depending on what the number is and the odds, and each table is different from odds. That's where you get a chance. That's what horse racing reminds me of because my son came to me. He actually called me while I was driving out to B-Dubs after church. He's like, I can't believe you're not watching the race. Well, I was trying to have dinner with a friend of mine. I said I was hoping to get to B-Dubs in time to watch the race. And he was asking who you had because he listens to our show. And I told him, and I said, I think he liked journalism too. I said that was the favorite, but it's a sloppy race and a sloppy track. I said, but unlike any other where you're betting on a team of men or women, there's a couple of factors you have to play into. Injuries certainly play into it, but you're also looking into where you're playing. Or you're at home, you're away. You're looking at obviously how good each player is. When you look at horse racing, you're looking at a multitude of things. And the more stuff you've got to look at, the better your chances are. And I was telling my son, he goes, I can't figure it out. He goes, I don't see how in the world you can look at a horse and tell if it's going to win a race. And I said, well, obviously you have to look at its track record, this pun intended. You look at its track record, but you're looking at the owner, you're looking at the trainer, you're looking at the jockey, you're looking at the horse, you're looking at the condition, you're looking at the track, and then you're actually looking at the eye test. I mean, I've had people tell me, man, if you get a horse that's, reeling up on the back legs and won't get in the gate, man, jump on it because it wants to run. I don't know if that's true or not. So there's all these different ramifications that come into playing. And that's why, you are as good as you are at doing what you do. I mean, you have to look at all those things. And, if you're going out to the Birmingham race course and you're like taking the best looking jockey or he's got some pink shorts on and you want to play that, or you like the name. I know a lot of people love the name. That's one of the reasons I love journalism because I was in journalism for so long. I thought, well, there you go. If there was one called Mr. Radio, I'd probably be all over it too, or Tone the Bone. I'd probably love a horse like that. And sometimes that does happen. And if you're going out there, but if you really want to go out there and make some money, you can. So, I think that's what's amazing about that.
Amazing about the Derby, Tony. It's more casual money than any race the entire year because everybody bets on the Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. And you have situations where this was unbelievable to me that Sovereignty went off as the fourth highest or fourth lowest betting choice. Mm-hmm. This was a horse that I felt like, should be journalism deserved it from just facts and data. I did point out that journalism had never run against more than 5 horses ever in any of his career races. There was 19 in this race.
It ran a hell of a race too, by the way. I mean, it had to come all the way from the outside. He was picking them off one by one. It looked like he was going to pull it out.
Great.
Yeah, he really did.
He really did. But here's the thing. You've got all these casual people. This one guy, he was a part owner of the horse Sandman, mm-hmm. who's named after Metallica, a Metallica song. So he had a big following from that. This guy chronicled his experience as an owner. He's got like 4 million followers on TikTok. He documented every day, everything about Sandman, played him up like he was the next Secretariat. And Sandman actually went off the second favorite in the race.
It sure did.
Tony, I threw his Sandman out mm-hmm. on paper and on my own personal inspection. I said Sandman's got no choice. And I had, out of the 19 horses, I went back and looked. I had 12 of them basically completely crossed off my list. Toby Keith, the late country music singer, had the number 15 horse that he owned. It was his dream to run in the Kentucky Derby. Render Judgment should have been 35 or 40 to 1. He went off at 12 to 1 because he was the sentimental choice. Because you've got people betting on that race that never bet all year long. And a lot of people are just going to go to the favorite. They're going to bet journalism because he's what everybody is raving about. It's just a really interesting race. But to get 9 to 1 on Sovereignty was like stealing. It was unbelievably fortuitous.
No, it's fantastic. Speaking of fillies, There was one that set a record this past weekend. She actually was singing. She actually mentioned, I think, the Kentucky Derby at her concert. She set a new world record for the most people at a concert, at one concert. It was at the Copacabana Cafe, not the cafe, but the actual park itself. They call it the cafe in Brazil. Lady Gaga, Saturday night, played a free concert in front of 2.5 million people. At one concert. We've had some 100,000 jobbers. There was 147,000 at the Kentucky Derby, by the way, which I think came close to setting a record. The record was Madonna, and that was from like 1.6 million people. That was done a couple of years ago, but she played before 2.5 million people. Of course, you'll also found out, I don't know if you were reading the newspaper this morning, there was evidently a terrorist attack that was foiled that they came out of and could have been something really, really bad about that.
Yeah.
And it was pointed towards the LGBT
Props
community.
to the Brazilian authorities for
no doubt
shutting that down.
But she was asked after the show if she wanted, with Mother's Day coming up here on May 11th, and we're doing this show here on Cinco de Mayo, happy Cinco de Mayo to you, if she wanted to be a mother. Now, Lady Gaga is 39 years old. She's married. And she said, absolutely, I want to be a mother. And she's having a difficult time trying to figure out how she's going to be a mom. And at the same time, how she's going to continue to sing like she is right now, because obviously you can sing while you're pregnant. You can do a lot of things.
Well, I was going to say, can't you sing while you're pregnant?
You sure can. You sure can. But I mean, I don't know if you'd be on the road 3 or 4 nights. Well, you can. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And when you got millions and millions of dollars, you can have all the nannies you want. You can have everything you want. Now, Pat Benatar was an interesting, and this is kind of what I wanted to get into. Pat Benatar was really interesting because she said, when I have children, I'm done. I'm finished. John McEnroe's wife, Patty Smythe, who, of course, is the lead singer of Scandal, she pulled the same thing. They had their biggest hit. She got pregnant. She said, I'm done. And they're like, whoa. Just take 9 months off and we'll be ready to go. 9 months is nothing. We'll come up with a new record and you're back on the road again. She wanted to be there for her child. She wanted to be there for her children. She wanted to make sure she was with them the entire time, that they didn't lead the life that she had led so far, where they're doing their homework off a tour bus and they're sleeping on strange couches and hotel rooms and blah, 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 blah. She wanted her children to go to a good Catholic school. She wanted them to ride the bus every single day, have friends, live in one city. And she was going to do everything to give it to her. And she goes, my career can wait. I can do that later. Pat Benatar did that same thing. And by the way, Pat Benatar has been married for 43 years. Obviously, that's worked out pretty well. A man she actually has in the band that does really well. But I was wanting to go back and look at some of the ladies of rock. And to me, and I'll say this, and I know people always say, being a mother is the hardest job in the world. I'm not going to say it's not, for sure. I know being a father is an incredibly difficult job. I'll never be a mother, so I don't know. I will say that I think that every mother's a rock star. I think every mother that gives a damn about their kids and does all the wonderful things, because they do hold that, just the fact they hold a child for 9 months in their belly. I can't imagine. I know what my ex had to go through. We adopted 2 children. And then the 6th time we got pregnant, she came to terms with it 12 weeks, 13 weeks into it. She was 40 years old. And I had to give her a progesterone shot in the stomach every single day. And I mean, I know just it was a rough pregnancy for her to go through 9 months of that. Of course, to have that to look forward to when she gave birth was a wonderful thing. But I went through some rock and rollers, and I wanted to throw some out to you as well about some of my favorite rock and roll mothers. You mind?
No, let me say one thing.
Sure.
On the horse racing that brought this in, the most successful female jockey in racing history, Rosie Napravnik, which is not a household name, but in horse racing circles, she was exceptional at the very height of her success in the sport, winning a Breeders' Cup race, Tony. She announced right after the race, that was my last race. I am retiring. I'm married. I'm going to have she was 33. She was absolutely on top of the sport. She said, I'm walking away. I'm going to have children. I'm going to have a family. I've had a great career, but this is more important to me. Rosie Napravnik, at the absolute zenith of her career, walked away. She's got 4 lovely children now. By all reports, a great mother and a happy family. So
how about that?
When women have the fortitude to make that kind of decision, I mean, I can't imagine how difficult that must be. But you have your different ways that life pushes you. And I have so much respect for somebody who can make that decision.
And I do too. And, I've been asked this question by both my kids. Are you glad you're a man or a woman? And I'm like, I'm glad to be a man. I don't, you and I have talked enough about what women do from everything they have to wear. My daughter's got to get up 30 minutes. She's 13 years old. She gets up 30 minutes early just to put makeup on. She's 13. She just had her first period. I mean, I'm just like, no, you can have it. I mean, God love you. I pray for women every single day. I think they're amazing creatures. I think God knew what he was doing when he made them. They're just amazing things. But I mean, we're talking about, for us, we have a child, we can continue to go to work. I know that, they've got this parental time off or whatever for men. Men now can tell you, come on, guys don't need to take 6 weeks off. When we have a child, we want to obviously have a bond with our child. Our children are going to be there. But I mean, a mother's got to breastfeed. She's got to do everything. In order to raise that child. So I understand the parental aspect of what a woman does with a child as opposed to a man. They're both equally as important for sure. But it's just amazing what a mother does. And so I'm thinking to myself, man, how could you? I mean, if you're sitting there on top of the world like a Pat Benatar, or in this particular case, a jockey, and all of a sudden you're having money thrown all your way, and you decide, hey, I want to hang it up to have a family. That's amazing. I mean, it really is. Nancy Wilson of Heart. She, and it's amazing because I wanted to find out, because you don't hear about these women's kids anywhere. Like, I didn't know Nancy had children. I didn't know Ann had children. Ann's adopted 2 children. She thought, well, I can have the best of both worlds. I will go ahead and I will rock and roll. I'll stay married. But I'll go ahead and adopt my children when I'm ready. And that way I can adopt however old I want. She obviously went out and got kids, some younger ones, but Nancy Wilson also went through surrogacy a couple of times. I don't think people realize this, and this kind of puts it on, I didn't realize until I was looking over some notes this morning. Aretha Franklin had her first child when she was 13.
No kidding.
She had her second child when she was 15.
Wow.
And by the way, both those sons are no longer with us. They passed away in the 2000s. But I mean, could you imagine Aretha Franklin, giving birth at 13, 15, then seeing the kind of career that she had? I mean, that's just
RESPECT.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's unbelievable. Linda Ronstadt, another one of those gals, where, was super successful, was doing fantastic, opened up for the Eagles, could have been an Eagle herself at the age of 44. Back in 1990, She decided, I'm going to hang it up and I want to have children. And she was right there at the apex of her career. She adopted a child in 1990, and then she adopted another one in 1994. This gal named Carly Simon had 2 children, Ben and James, with a famous guy. You remember who that was, right?
Yep.
That'd be James Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, she had a couple of kids with James, and she had another one on her own. Cyndi Lauper, who I can't stop seeing on television, she's doing some pharmaceutical commercial. I think it's for some type of eczema or some type of itching thing. I don't know what it is. Anyway, but I mean, she had this big hit called Girls Just Want to Have Fun back in like 1983, 84, something like that. And then she just came out and she exploded. She had, for people that think that was her biggest hit, that was probably the least of her hits. She just did fantastic. She just got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for God's sakes. Right there in 1997, 14 years after her first hit, she decided to go ahead and have a child. And now she's still on the road doing her thing. Melissa Etheridge, do you remember her story as a mother?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Melissa Etheridge wanted to have a child. She is gay, obviously. She has been married twice. I believe she's with her second mate right now. But she wanted to have some good sperm. And so she called a good friend of hers, Mr. David Crosby from Crosby, Stills and Nash, and said, said, David, would you
not the best looking guy of all time?
No, but I'm thinking to myself, when Michael and Lisa Marie got together, I was kind of like, okay, what are we going to have here? Are we going to have some super child? I mean, we're going to have some, what kind of child are we going to have? I mean, think about when you're putting those kind of genetics together with one person to another. So she had a child with David Crosby. David Crosby, of course, was her surrogate, if you will, but lent his stuff to her, and she ended up having a healthy baby child as well. And then finally, and I did not realize this, but I was listening to some Pretenders. I was actually looking up the Pretender album from Jackson Browne, because I know that's one of your favorites. And then the band, the Pretenders, came up. Chrissie Hynde,
huh?
Actually had a child with Ray Davies of the Kinks.
No kidding.
I had no clue. I had no idea.
That's amazing.
They had a hookup back in the 70s, and I don't know what that child does, but you'd like to think that if you Ray Davies and Chrissie Hynde got together and made a baby, it would be pretty musically inclined.
I would think so. Back to Nancy Wilson, I assume she had her children with her husband, Cameron Crowe, a very prominent Hollywood producer. And we talked about Cameron Crowe last week when we were talking about Jackson Browne, because I told you that was the one song he's recorded that he doesn't like to sing as somebody's baby. Yep. He did that as a personal favor for Cameron Crowe. So Nancy Wilson also singing in several Cameron Crowe movies. She in the great movie with John Cusack, Say Anything, she sings the theme song of that movie, All for Love, which is one of my favorites.
Yep. And I believe Ann and Nancy are coming back to town. I think they're coming to town coming up in a couple months. I saw Hearts coming. Yeah,
it's
a good thing because they played here at the Oak Mountain Amphitheater about 3 years ago, and they weren't supposed to play with each other because they were going to break up. And these are like sisters to the core. They took the same bus everywhere. They wear the same clothes. They did everything. Obviously, one's gotten bigger than they had up having. You know what happens when two guys' wives get together and they start bickering. Next thing you know, the guys can't be friends anymore. Well, the husbands of Nancy and Ann end up getting into some type of argument. And Nancy's husband, it's not Cameron anymore, was evidently causing some ruckus on the bus. I don't know what the deal was. But they decided that blood was thicker than water. And so they were like, hey, listen, we're going to make this work. And they still sound fantastic. But kudos to all those mothers out there that.
Every mother.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that we don't have to make that choice. And to be honest with you, I remember my ex and I were going to decide to have a baby, and we were going to adopt a baby. And we tried several times and went through, had a DNC, the whole 9 yards, and couldn't get her pregnant. And so I said, maybe God's telling us to adopt a child first. So we went and adopted our oldest child, Santo, who's just came back from Clemson yesterday as a sophomore. And it was one of the best days of my life. It was unbelievable. But I remember sitting there looking at her. I said, "Man, we're gonna plan this out now. That we're not flying by the seat of our pants here." But she was making more money than I was. And I'm a radio guy, and at that point I was doing pretty well, but I wasn't where I was. I wasn't close to where I was headed. And she was like, "Oh no, if you want to work, you work, and I'll stay home." And I said, "Okay, that's great." Because I just told her, I said, "Listen, we're going to be losing out on about $90,000 to $100,000 between the two of us." Wow. And I said, "I'm going to have to work my ass off." And she's like, "I get it." And I said, "Okay," and that was kind of our understanding, and I did. It almost killed me. But I almost did. And then consequently, we ended up getting pregnant again. Then we adopted another child. I said, maybe he wants to adopt a second. And then God's got that sense of humor. About 7 years later, my wife gets pregnant again. And her doctor said, we're having this child. And I was like, oh, good Lord, here we go. And I was like 44, 45 when the third one came along. So what a blessing. But, no, I remember sitting there thinking to myself, we get to get out. So, some guys, I know guys that don't change diapers. For God's sakes.
That's crazy.
It's just when I went home to see my dad with my first child, and he's holding my Santo, and Santo shits his pants, and my dad's holding him out like holding him out to me like this. I said, what? He goes, I think he had an accident. I said, well, go change his diaper. My dad has never changed a diaper, ever. He's like, I've never changed a diaper. I said, you've never changed a diaper? And he's like, no. And I said, let me show you how. And he goes, no, really.
Amazing.
I don't want to. And I love my dad. My dad was fantastic. My dad was always there for me. He was my best friend. But he couldn't even look at a dirty diaper. He would throw up. I don't know that video of that. It was, I think it's some guy in the Navy or the Army or whatever. He's trying to change a diaper. He's like, oh, he's acting like he's throwing up. It's hilarious. But he's like, he couldn't even. He's like, no. He goes, I don't change diapers. I don't do that. And I was like, wow, I never knew. But a lot of guys are kind of like, hey, you pump it, you jack it around, you change the diapers. I'll keep working and I'll keep validating. And it's you're missing out on the best parts, man. Man, there's nothing better when a kid pees on you.
And it's your kid. I mean, that's one thing people do not understand. And even people that have kids do not understand. These kind of rigid parents with all of their rules and regulations and stipulations. I'm not going to let my child turn into, some kind of outcast or whatever. And, these are extensions of you. Mm-hmm. These are not rentals that you go and take a chance on.
No.
These products of your creation are reflections and extensions of you. And it amazes me how many parents take kind of a different approach to that, where, I had a parenting style where I always had confidence in my kids. I didn't have to be a rigid disciplinarian. I was effective in talking to them like people that I'm closely associated with. You can't be any closer than your anybody, but then your kids. They're an extension of you.
Yep.
And you have to have confidence in your own kids, and you have to arm them with the information that they can make good decisions for themselves, because that's all I ever asked of them. The one requirement I had, no matter what you do or what you're thinking about doing, take an extra second and just make sure that it's a smart decision. That was pretty much the governing guideline, and both of my sons have turned out splendidly and are thriving and doing unbelievably well. And we work with one of them every week on K4 and on the starting lineup, and the other one makes all of this technical things I'm involved with. I'm sitting here in my home studio right now doing this show with you, thanks to the brilliance of my youngest son. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. And in this day and age, and I just mentioned it on this edition of Need to Know, in this day and age where you've got a lot of younger people saying, having a family, that's so much work. And so, it takes away my freedom and everything else. It gives back 10 million times more than you put into it.
It's so worth it. And if you do, again, like anything else, the more you put into it, the more you get out. I still don't understand. And we've talked about divorce on this show a million times. It's the worst thing in the world for anyone that's ever been through. It's awful. And when all of a sudden I'm being told that in a good light, if things work out well, I'm only going to see my children half the time. Everyone says that time goes by so quick. Well, just cut that in half. And I'm thinking, all of a sudden, because, this woman here doesn't want to be with me anymore, I'm only going to see my children 15 times out of the month. That is devastating. And so from that point on, man, I was like, I'm going to spend every waking minute with my child I can. I can date the other 2 weeks. I can go on vacation the other 2 weeks. I can go golfing the other 2 weeks. But when I have my child, when I have my kids around, and that's one thing I wanted to mention too, because I think, being a parent, you kind of see this. I'll never tell anyone how to parent their children. Obviously, you're in my house, my rules. But I see how kids react to their parents, and I can tell what kind of relationship they have. And I can see how your children react around you and the respect that they give their dad. And I mean, I love that. I think the days of yes or no, sir, should come back. I think it shows an ultimate amount of respect. I see that from your boys. And that's just a wonderful thing. We're not here to be their best friends. We're here to be their dads first. And if you can have a nice relationship with your son or your daughter later on in life, when they have their own children, or maybe they have their children's children, that's wonderful. Go on vacation together, have a great time. But you got to be a dad or a mom first. And I think that's the most important part. But I think that's just, it's just amazing to see people. I was watching Friends. It's on every day on TBS. And of course, you don't ever see the kids, they had Ben, right? And I know it's a TV show. Okay. I know it's a TV show. I know it's not real life, right? But you don't ever see Ben in the show, and I'm like, where the hell's his child? Where's this kid at? And of course, this kid only comes in when Ben's written into the script, and I get that, I understand that, But there's one scene where he's like, hey, this Christmas, guess what, folks? I get Ben, and they're like, oh, that's great. I'm thinking, as a single father, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this Christmas you get Ben, like he hadn't had his child for Christmas.
And of course, Ben's in the care of a lesbian couple because they have to put that in, and now it's compulsory.
Exactly. And I'm sitting there I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I mean, you get Ben. This is your child. So yeah, I just It drives me bananas. It's crazy. Kids are resilient though. They're super strong. And unfortunately, half of all children have going through a broken home anyway. They figure it out. And I do think there are some things, there's some silver linings to it for sure, because I think they'd rather see a mom and dad that are really happy apart than be really pissed off together, for what that's worth. So, but I didn't want to go there, but I did want to show my appreciation and my love for mothers out there. I did want to give a shout out to Kay Taylor, who I mentioned on this show last year. And this was one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up. Kay Taylor was my radio teacher. She, and it's funny because when I left high school, I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. She had family in Louisville, Kentucky, and she would come down and we would meet maybe once every 3 or 4 months, and we'd have margaritas. And we'd eat dinner together. And I never looked at her as anything but my teacher. Okay. Anything but my teacher. But looking back on it, I'm thinking, I think I had a shot. I almost wanted to ask her that. Hey, did I ever have a shot? Cause she used to meet me and she'd be coming back from Jazzercise. You remember Jazzercise? She'd have her
Oh, sure.
She'd have her Jazzercise outfit on and she'd come walking into the bar or whatever. But anyway, so she was, and my mom, God rest her soul, she was depressed for 50, 60 years, was abused as a child from her dad. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I can't wait to see her in heaven and give her a hug and tell her, I'm so sorry that you went through what you did, because she really gave it everything she had. She stopped the cycle of abuse in our family. She's a hero. She's a saint for me. And I don't know if she just didn't know how to do it or not, but my teacher was the first one that kind of showed me that she believed in me. And I know that people always have stories about their teachers. There was positions. There was like a music director, a program director, and an operations manager for the radio station we had in our high school. And I was a sophomore, so I was 10 years old or 18 years old in 10th grade. And she came to me and she said, I think you should try for the program director. Well, that's king of the hill, man. That's like, and there were seniors and juniors that were vying for the same position. She saw something in me and she said, I think you should be the program director. And I said, no, there's no way I could be a program director. I'm not, And that's when you had to check meters every hour. You still had to check meters every single hour, or else the radio station get taken off the air and everything else. And so I said, but I will run for music director, because I thought music director would be kind of fun. And, I could listen to music. And from what I understood, the music directors were called the crazy ornery ones, but the program directors are the ones that behind the doors and they had to make all the big decisions. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a radio guy, And so came up the day when we voted on this stuff, and I got to be music director. And then when it came to program director, she said, I'm doing something that I've never done before here at Lakota High School. She said, but I'm giving someone 2 jobs, and that's going to be Mr. Kurre. So she made me program director and music director. I didn't think I could do one, let alone do both. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, she believes in me. She was the one that put me in Kiwanis Club. She voted me in for Kiwanis Club. She wrote letters, and just a wonderful woman. She really had a very dry sense of humor. You never knew what kind of mood she was in. She had a look on her face, and then she would laugh, and you're like, okay, good. Because you never knew what kind of mood she was in. Like a lot of high school teachers, sometimes she just fly off and get pissed off about something. But anyway, I called her the other day, and I don't know why I called her. I wasn't thinking about Mother's Day. I wasn't thinking about anything else. And I was on the phone with her for 2.5 hours, and she brought up the show that you and I had done last year. She said, I just want to tell you something. You did a show with a friend of yours named Kip, and you did a show about the favorite women in your life. And you said I was one of the favorite women in your life. And she said, I still hold on to that. I have that show and I listen to it occasionally. And she goes, I really appreciate it. She goes, I cry every time I hear it. And it just made me feel really, really good, because, what do you talk to a woman who's in her 80s and you knew her best when you were 16? I mean, what do you talk about? I mean, it's like, and what you realize that when older people want to keep in touch with you, they don't need to talk. When someone says, hey, call me anytime, reach out to me, like a nursing home people don't give a shit whether they can tell you how their day is. They just want to be around another warm body. They want to hear someone that cares about them. They want to touch somebody. They want to hear another voice that's actually open to listening to what they are doing that particular day. And so for her to sit there and just say, my mouth was like, you know how my mouth goes, man. We went and had lunch last week, and my mouth moves like a duck's ass. I mean, it's just nonstop. When I get going, man, I don't stop. It's just going back and forth. And I'll sit there and my salad will get warm before I'll have to take in the first bite. And so I just went off and talked, and I said, man, Kay, I said, I'm so sorry, but I think I've been talking for like an hour. And she's like, no. She's I love it. Keep telling me about what's going on. She wanted to know about my kids and everything else. And then she told me about a bum knee she had or whatever, and I let her go. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up. She listened to it. She played it for all of her friends. And just to go to show, I don't know if teachers are that important to students like they used to be, like they were with us. My kids tell me their favorite teachers, but I don't know if they'll remember them like I do with Kay now at the age of 59. So, and I know that we could do a whole show on teachers too, but I know you've had some really special people in your life, but she's the only teacher I remember Mr. Tip Kemper, who was he was a gay music guy. He taught me how to play the trumpet real well, ironically enough. He teach me to do lip exercises, which now I look back on, I go, that's interesting. And he was the only, and there was a girl named Miss Cherry who was a woman who was a sub. That's the only three teachers I can remember in my entire life. My entire life, that's the only three I can remember by name. I cannot remember any of them. Now, if I went back and looked, I'd name every one of them, but those are the only three I can remember by name. So there you have it.
I mean, I've still got a cherished relationship with my 10th grade English teacher. She's a Facebook friend. I saw her at a mini reunion at my high school a couple of years ago. Trudy Black. We got to single her out today. Anybody listening from Peachtree High School back in the day will remember Trudy.
Oh, hashtag.
Trudy was a teacher who was like in her mid-20s at the time. She was vibrant. She was enthusiastic. She loved what she was doing. She was English. She was, we had our assigned reading. We had our writing and everything else. I really want to single Trudy out because with so many teachers trying to structure me and discipline me, because I was not disciplined in that era. My school was my neighborhood, my whole area had boomed so much during the Atlanta massive expansion of the late 60s that by the time that I got into high school in the 70s, we were so overcrowded. They didn't know who was coming, who was going. We had, in a school that was designed for maybe 2,000, we had like 4,500 kids. It was just insane, Tony. And you could get away with murder. And it was more challenging for me to try and beat the system than be academically successful because I recognized they were teaching me a bunch of crap that I never would ever take, geometry. What the hell? If you're not going to be an engineer, why do you need to learn postulations and theorems? And I knew it at 15. This is a waste of my freaking time. And I had a really bad attitude about a lot of classes. I liked going to Trudy's class because she was so enthusiastic. She didn't inspire me to do great work because I was the biggest goof off ever. My best friend, Jim Heverin, was with me one day at the end of the first quarter when we went in, and she said, okay, Kip, do you want to know what your grade is? And I said, yeah. And she said, okay, well, your test score average is only 42. You didn't turn in these 4 homework assignments, and you never turned in the first draft of your term paper. I'm afraid that's going to drag you down to a C. Jim still tells that story.
That's awesome.
Jim Hever, my best friend, says, Keefer, I wish someone would go back and do further review on your high school transcript. I'm convinced you only had half the credits. They just gave you a diploma so you would get the hell out of there.
It's like giving SpongeBob his driver's license so he doesn't have to go back to the Blowfish. Man, that's, and it's so funny too because, and I don't want to be pervertish here or titillating or whatever. When I pick my kids up in the carpool, Dude, teachers did not look like that back in my day. I'm sorry, they did not. And it's funny because now whenever we hear about a teacher doing something with a student they should not supposed to, it always seems like it's some smoking hot blonde chick. I'm like, what is that? We never had that. Every teacher was old.
Now it's a crime. Now that's child abuse. Are you kidding me?
I mean,
that would have been like hitting the freaking jackpot.
I mean, that was the best recess my third grade teacher ever had, for God's sakes. No, but and my daughter came to me the other day and she said, Dad, did you hear that they're going to vote on the state of Alabama that teachers can start hitting students? And I said, what are you talking about? She said, they're going to let teachers hit students. And I said, you like paddling? She goes, I guess. I don't know. She goes, what's paddling? I said, well, back in the day, if you got in trouble, you went to the principal's office and there was a paddle and there was a big ass piece of wood. And we talked about that thing, with holes in it. With holes in it so you get some air in it. Yeah, we used to think it was this big. By the time we got done talking about it, it was as wide as the screen was. And, we would talk about some people used a baseball bat. People were talking about things. And I got paddled one time, and that wasn't the part that hurt because I knew if I got paddled at school, I was really going to get to shit when I got home. Now, parents look after their kids. How dare you touch my child? You should be calling me first. I'll take care of it. I'll put him in timeout, blah, blah, blah. You didn't care about getting paddling. You were caring about that phone call that the teacher was going to make to your mom or dad when you got home and you were going to have to deal with them. That was the seriousness behind it. That was a drag. And she also couldn't remember. I said, you used to go smoke. She's like, what? I said, yeah, we had a smoking pit. She said, in high school? And I said, yeah, we had a smoking pit in high school. You could smoke in the middle of classes. You could go light up. She's like, you're kidding me. I said, no. I said, no, I think you had to be a junior, but you could go smoke. And I said, and you could go get paddled. It was okay for teachers could touch you. They could smack you. I said, I used to get wrapped across my knuckles with rulers all the time, man. The teachers, because that hurt like hell. Teachers would walk by my desk and just bang you on the knuckles real hard. I mean, hell yeah. But hey, we turned out okay, right?
Well, kinda. Yeah.
We did okay.
That's a loaded question.
No doubt. Happy Cinco de Mayo, my friend. You got anything going on special here for this? By the way, this is not to celebrate the Spaniards' independence. What is this day to celebrate, Kip? I knew you'd know this because you're a history buff.
Cinco de Mayo?
Yes.
Who's it? You're going to have to enlighten me.
This is the day that the Spanish actually defeated the French, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and so they celebrate that day. And by the way, you go down to Mexico, they're not doing squat down there. They're just taking a nap. This is like a regular day down in Mexico. Yeah. This is one of those American things, just like St. Patty's Day. In Ireland, they do nothing on March 17th. We take that. We've taken that holiday and we have blown it out. But
it's an invention by bars to sell lots of booze.
Cinco de Mayo is much bigger here than it is anywhere south of the border for sure.
Not to get real political, but I did hear a news item this morning that several sanctuary cities have canceled Cinco de Mayo parades and things today because they're worried that ICE is going to be there hauling people away. Anybody who's legally
that's a great place to look, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but anybody who's legally in the country has nothing to worry about, Tony. They're taking away illegal criminals. They're not taking away people with green cards or somebody who wants to go down and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. The whole thing by the media is just being so blown out of proportion. It's just ridiculous.
They pulled that trick. Was it in Colorado Springs last week? Where they reached out to like 100 different men and they offered them Colorado and Colorado State football tickets. They said, hey, you've won tickets because you've done something, blah, 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 blah. And of course, these are guys that, they have arrest warrants for them. They're here illegally. Yep. And they're dumbasses thinking, wow, hey, honey, guess what? I won tickets to Colorado State. So they invite them to come down to the convention center and they lock the doors and they arrest every one of them. I'm like, man.
Yep. They've been doing that with the Super Bowl for years.
Yep.
To get people that have been on the lam to come forward. And you're willing to take a chance. But if you're wanted for something and somebody offers you something for free, you might want to think twice about taking them up on it.
Too good to be true for sure. All right, we'll get down and celebrate again this Saturday, 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm sure you're going to gloat about having the horse this past week, and you should talk for 30 minutes about it. K4wins.com. Go ahead.
I don't really gloat. It's satisfying to be right, but I even had moments yesterday of just feeling like, it's such a thankless business to be a prognosticator, because when you're right, you don't get anybody that says, "Hey, good job, you're right, thank you, I made $250 on the race." But when you're wrong, it's like, boy, those are some shitty picks. So, it's just a thankless job. It's the ultimate, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, as a prognosticator, the only way you can win is you have to pick the ones that you win and just stuff it down people's throat and don't talk about the games you'll lose. Just pretend they don't even exist. But if you go to K4Wins.com, we're on the up and up on everything. We're hitting about 67, 68%.
It's all documented.
We had sovereignty up. It's all documented. Kip had a day last week. He went 9-0, which I've never seen before. I know Kai went 9-0 on our TV show. You can go back and look at it, folks. It's out there. It's the real deal. We're going to be on a brand new platform coming up here in the next few weeks. It's taken forever to make it happen, but when we do, it's going to be huge on the Coastal Radio Network. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be on the whole East Coast. So we're looking forward to making that happen. And of course, we're right around the corner, man. Everyone's had their special football days, if you want to call them. I don't know what they call them. They don't call them A games anymore. No one's playing football anymore, but it's right around the corner. The transfer portal is open, and so it won't be too long before we get back into college football. So it's going to be fantastic. And by the way, programming
SEC Media Days. SEC Media Days, Monday, July 13th. That is right around the corner.
Isn't it crazy? That's unbelievable. And SEC baseball coming here May 20th.
Oh, yeah.
Some great stuff. By the way, programming note real quick, too. We do our K4 Win Show on Fridays. We're moving that to Tuesdays, which means we're going to be doing that tomorrow. And we're going to record that at 10 o'clock Central Time, which means it'll be up by probably about noon Eastern Time. And that thing is growing big time here on the Tony Kurre Radio Network. So make sure you check that out. And hopefully by laying it Tuesday in the middle of the week, we can kind of set the standards, set the weekend apart a little bit. And then as we get closer to the football season, we'll see about adding a couple more shows, because that show's too good not to be heard by everyone in our listening area, which is everyone. All right, my friend, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right, Tony. Always enjoy it.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.